Hey, how you doing? My name is Josh McCann. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at Columbia Heights, and I just wanted to bring a challenging thought, an encouraging thought to all of us as parents. And so it's the new year. Things are kind of rapidly changing, even in our nation. Things are, maybe even changing in your world. I mean, maybe every single year you think of goals or expectations or things that you want to see different in your own personal life. And I just want to bring just a thought to you as a parent to think through during the new year. And it has to do with this big picture idea of culture. And the reason why I say that is because the culture is like the behavior or belief of a people group or organization. And it's basically the way you do life. It's the way you do you. It's the way you do your family. And think of the culture of your family as like the garden or the environment that you are in. And that's the environment or the culture that your kids live in. Have you ever been to a house that's just stressed or just tense? I mean, you walk in and you just like literally feel like you could cut it with a knife. It's so tense. I mean, that's the culture that is there. Or what about homes where kids like run the show? We probably all have seen that, right? Where it's like the parents try to discipline their kids, but their kids don't listen. I mean, it's the culture in which was created. Or what about like homes that there's just a lot of yelling? I mean, that was the environment I grew up in. Like whoever yelled the loudest won. I mean, that was the culture. And so all of it stems back to the environment in which you and I allow to take place as parents within our homes. It's the culture of our homes. And Genesis chapter 2 verse 15 says that God took man and placed him in the garden to tend it and to take care of it, to cultivate it, to keep it. And man was in charge of making sure that the right elements got in the garden and the right seeds got planted within the garden. Why? Because what you plant in the garden is what's going to be produced. And it's the same way with you and I as parents. It's like what we allow in will eventually come out. And so think of your home really as the garden in which God placed you in. And what type of seeds, what type of environment, what type of culture are you and I allowing to come in to our parenting? And the reality of parenting is we really are responsible for that. And that's tough sometimes because sometimes we look at, go, man, I'm not doing a good job, or I'm not measuring up, or man, everything else is going crazy. But we really are responsible for the environment. And you think of like even Moses. Moses, when he was born, it says that his mom took Moses, built an ark for him, and coated it from the inside out, then placed him in that ark. Why did she coat it first? To protect him from the possible harmful elements from the outside. And that's what you and I have to do as parents is we've got to look at the culture of our home, the environment of our home as the garden that we've got to protect, that we've got to fight off the enemy, that we've got to make sure that the right seed is being planted so our kids can flourish. And as parents, we have to do that same thing. And I remember when I first became a parent, man, I remember being in the hospital, getting ready to take home my little guy for the very first time. And I remember going, man, where's the parenting manual? You know, like they never gave me a how-to on like how to parent. And I was so scared. I was so nervous. I was like, well, I don't know what it means to be a parent. And that's the crazy thing about parenting is that it's the most scariest journey any of us will ever take. I mean, we were responsible for these little guys. And it's like, oh my goodness, I hope I don't mess them up. You know, I hope I do the right job. I hope I protect them. I hope I do all this other stuff. And the thing that I'm realizing is that the environment or the culture that I set as a parent in my home is directly affecting my kids. And so I'm responsible for allowing the right culture to come in or the bad culture to come in. And that's can be sometimes stressful because sometimes we don't know what to do. Maybe you're watching this, or maybe you're listening to this, or maybe someone watched it and they told you about it. And maybe you're wondering, what do I do? I'm looking at the culture of my home and it's not where I would like it to be. I'm looking at the garden and I realize that there's some weeds. What do I do at that moment in that time? And I just want to give you just a couple things to think through. In 2017, man, it's a new year, it's a new day. Just let me give you a few things that maybe to help you process that thought. First off is lead the way in the change. Lead the way in the change. As a parent, if you aren't leading in the type of change that you're wanting to see, you'll never plant the right seed to bring about the right culture in your home. You and I both have to lead the way for our kids. We are the leaders of the home. And so you got to lead the way. That's the very first thing. You lead the way. Man, if you want your kids to pick up their clothes, but you're not picking up their clothes, or up your clothes, they're probably not going to pick up their clothes. So we got to lead the way in that, right? That's just a practical example, but we have to lead the way. And then number two, rely on God's grace. God has given you and I everything we need to be the parents that he's called us to be. He's given us everything we need to have the right culture and the right garden that he desires for us. And so we've got to rely on his grace, because it is so amazing. And he wants to empower you and I to be that parent that he's called us to be. And then number three is this is really practical, is remember the age of your child and parent to the age. This is what I mean by that. Is I have 4 kids, and my oldest is 11 years old, and he's a boy. And my youngest son is the 3rd child, but he's 7. And if I'm not careful, if I'm not aware, sometimes I could put this pressure on my 7-year-old to begin to act like the 11-year-old when he's 7. And it's not fair to me as a parent, it's especially not fair to him as a child. And so I've got to constantly sometimes remind myself, dude, Josh, he's only 7. You know, he's not going to act like the 11-year-old. And so I just say that to say that will relieve pressure and kind of tension, because just realize it's a season. You know, it will get better. Your 4-year-old will hopefully stop throwing themselves on the floor and like complaining and griping. But if they're still doing that at 16, that's a whole nother ballgame, right? Parent to the age. And then a couple other things. Number 4 actually, is remember it's more important to leave a legacy than to leave an inheritance. And this is what I mean by that. An inheritance is something you and I are going to leave our kids when we breathe our last breath. And we should plan for that. We should think through that. But it's way more important to leave a legacy, because leaving a legacy is what you produce in them that will manifest itself when they leave home. That's more important, man. Helping impact their heart. And how you impact their heart is the culture or the garden in which you produce around you. And so realize that it's way more important for that than to have all this massive cash later on in life for them. When really, man, if you could produce something in them and I could produce something in my kids, it's going to leave a lasting legacy. And then lastly, number 5, is no parent is perfect. Doesn't matter. I haven't seen one parent that's perfect. And so realize, don't beat yourself up. Don't be like, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. Listen, none of us are perfect. We're all learning as we go. But we do serve a perfect God. And he wants to help you. He wants to help me be that parent that he's called us to be. Even when we make mistakes and when we like go and crud. Man, I got some weeds in my garden that I really got to uproot. Man, just be honest with yourself. Look at your garden. Look at the environment in which you are helping set, and just go, okay, hey, look, let's make a couple changes in 2017. Why? Because we're impacting our kids. And I'm looking at my life and looking at my culture and my family, and there's things that I want to change in 2017. The cool thing is that God wants to help me do that. Now, there is a part and responsibility on my part. That's why I said number 1, you've got to lead that. And so I want to encourage you. What are the areas? What are some things? Think through those, but realize that God's grace is greater than any mistake you've made, and kids do forgive a lot easier than what we give them credit for. They'll forgive you of your mistakes. Just own it. And realize, dude, we're all on this crazy journey called parenting. But at the same time, God wants to help you create the garden and the environment to produce about something that will change a generation. And you and I get to be a part of that. That's what's stinking cool. We get to be a part of that. So I hope this challenge, I hope it encourages, I hope it gets you thinking. I hope it helps you just like go, okay, what's the environment, what's the culture in which my family is growing up in? And how can I bring about the right garden that God's placed me in to care for and to tend it? You have that attitude, I bet you anything, you'll produce about a legacy that will change a generation.